Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast presented by Coinbase. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Monday morning here on the floor.
We're off to a roaring start.
First turnover.
On the floor.
First turnover.
7 more to catch up.
Wasn't
with
the
Luka.
first turnover that was on this court tonight. We're out here in Porzingis land, out beyond the 3-point range, on the logo. This is a TD Garden logo. It still counts as a logo 3 if you're out here. Joining me here at center court after Game 2 of the NBA Finals, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
And, of course, Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners.
I hear that there's been a soft promise that you will not be banned in the future by the Mavericks.
Well, I don't want to reveal who that promise came from because it might lead to the promise being reneged.
Okay. We'll pretend that promise didn't happen. Okay. I just want to say that I know they didn't do it on purpose, but I felt it at the time, and I'm even more convinced now, the colossal mistake that was made by the Milwaukee Bucks to allow the Jrue Holiday to come to the Celtics.
I remember one person had that position a few months ago.
I had the position the day that they traded him to Portland, and I said, I hope he doesn't go to Boston.
Okay, let's not have a told you so tug of war. My goodness.
Well, whatever. I just wrote a story about this last week, and I talked to, off the record to all the teams involved. Milwaukee wanted to get Dame Lillard done, and that was a huge trade for them, one of the biggest transactions they've ever made in their franchise history.
And it was a colossal mistake.
And they couldn't control. Portland decided, whatever. I don't need to go over old ground.
Well,
the point
know what
is,
else was one of the biggest transactions in Milwaukee Bucks history?
Trading for Jrue Holiday.
And
when they traded for Jrue Holiday, they won him a title.
Yeah.
And the Boston Celtics trading for Jrue Holiday is going to win them a title.
if this was a best-of-3 series, which obviously it is not, I would have voted for Jrue Holiday for MVP. He's been absolutely fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic tonight. The Celtics are doing a lot correct. But Jrue Holiday has been worth his weight in platinum in this series. He was worth his weight in platinum in the conference finals. And he has been just an absolute huge difference maker. In general, the Celtics are vastly outplaying the Mavericks, which we will talk about here.
You want a Jrue Holiday stat? Sum that up from Stats Williams.
Please.
He has the second most points in NBA history through 2 finals games without a turnover. He has 38 points.
38
You know who has
points.
the most points without a turnover in the first 2 games of the NBA Finals?
I do, but I cheated.
I don't.
I mean, take a guess.
It
Michael
should be
Jordan.
Michael Jordan,
There
who
you
had
go.
70 points in the first 2 games
Oh.
of the 1998 Finals. Michael Jordan was pretty good.
Yeah.
Jrue Holiday also, however,
98.
pretty good.
That was pretty. It was.
And look, Jrue Holiday is a big part of the reason that Kyrie Irving has not had a good series so far. It's not just a one-on-one battle. He also spent a lot of time tonight on Luka Dončić, but Kyrie does not have a lot of space to operate. Jrue Holiday is, he's the best perimeter defender in the NBA, and he's having a heck of an offensive series. And I tell you what, man, they're trying. That's the problem with the Celtics is there's nobody to hide a guy
On either end.
You want to give Luka the easiest assignment, and Luka's spending a lot of time on Jrue Holiday, and Jrue Holiday, on a related note, is spending a lot of time in the paint.
Yes, we'll talk about Luka and Kyrie a little bit more at length later, but this is related with what I'm about to say. Obviously, the Celtics shot the ball very poorly tonight. This was a game that, if I told you before the Celtics were going to go 10 of 39 on threes, you would say, well, the Mavericks got to win that one.
They sure do.
They didn't, and one of the big reasons was Jrue Holiday went 9 of 9 in the paint, and I believe 7 of 7 in the restricted area. He basically got to the rim because he knew that his team needed it. Actually,
well, and most of those were broken plays in the half court where he just smartly cut to the rim, and Luka Dončić wasn't there. Other guys weren't there, and it was him doing that repeatedly and them finding him. It was an example of what Boston did the whole game, which was trust their process. Obviously, they're blood rivals down in Philly. They like to talk about trusting the process, our guy Joel Embiid. But the Celtics are, under Joe Mazzulla in particular, a process-oriented team. Joe is always talking about we do what we want to do, what we expect to do, and we'll let the results dictate themselves.
right.
The Celtics, we were talking about it all game in our text thread. Every trip down, the Celtics got a wide-open shot. They couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in this game, but they kept sticking with what they do, and as a result, they kept getting wide-open shots. They got enough offensive rebounds. They eventually hit some big threes late, but they stuck with what they wanted to do at both ends of the court and trusted in what they do. And even though Jayson Tatum couldn't hit a shot, even though they couldn't hit a three, even though, they threw the ball around a little bit, they stuck with what they do, and they won a game going 10 for 39 from three at home. This is game 2. They always lose game 2s at home. We've talked how
the
often
Mavs
have we,
always bounce back to win game 2.
and how often have we talked in the past about when the Celtics don't hit threes, they're in big trouble. And they won this game because they stuck to who they are at both ends of the court.
Yeah,
and that's why they're up 2-0 in the series.
people who criticize the Celtics for relying too much on the three, which Joe Mazzulla just bats away because he's like, whatever, this is the way we're going to play. The Celtics drove the ball tonight relentlessly.
That's right.
Probably because they knew they could get past the Mavericks perimeter, but they manufactured their way to 105 points, which, by the way, if the Celtics score 105, you got to beat them.
Well,
Yeah.
and they scored 107 in game 1, and they've probably played B to B- games in the first 2 games, and they've dominated both games.
I think they would give their own. They had a great first quarter offensively of game 1. I don't think they've played
I'm saying
anywhere to their level offensively.
I'm saying B to B- overall because they're playing
Oh
A
yeah,
level.
I'm talking
defense.
about offense.
Yes.
Offensively.
No, offense is a C or worse tonight.
Tatum has not gotten it going at all in this series. Now, he's done a good job facilitating, but Tatum has struggled scoring, and they're up 2-0 in the series.
Well, and listen, when the way the Celtics are, you mentioned it before, the Celtics, their blow-by rate for Dallas in the first quarter, or game 1, it was the highest of the whole playoffs per second spectrum. It's probably going to be in the same range
Dude,
today.
they had 35 blow-bys tonight. It's the
Yep.
third most in a playoff game over the last decade.
I mean, listen, and you said it before, the superpower of the Celtics is that they have at both ends no holes or no weaknesses anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they can exploit whatever your weakness is. And for Dallas on defense, it's Luka Dončić, who's obviously dealing with a bunch of injury stuff. He comes out before the game. He's got his whole chest
he
wrapped.
looks like a mummy. He's got his chest, his knee, like everything's wrapped.
He looks like a mummy on an average day.
Well,
They're adding
but I'm
extra.
saying, like, with all the bandages.
I know.
On defense, he's moving like a mummy, and the Celtics are relentlessly going at him,
Well-
and they're picking that scab over and over and over again, because whether it's Derek White or Jrue Holiday or Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, whoever's got the ball, they can go at him.
Well,
and they're going at him every time.
And Dallas, for the first 3 series, during their run through the Western Conference playoffs, did such a great job of packing the paint and making everything about, congesting things in there. You're going to have to finish in traffic. That is so hard to do against the Celtics because they play 5 out, because their spacing is so good. And tonight, 10 of 39, obviously a tough shooting night for the Celtics, but man, a lot of those 29 misses were clean, wide open looks that were generated by, drive and kick, and there were some possessions where it was like there were 2 or 3 blow-bys, and just everything was created by, them attacking and having great spacing.
And at the other end of the court, you've got Derek White and Jrue Holiday, who you can alternate on Kyrie Irving. And we talked about the Oklahoma City series coming into this series. Can the Celtics slow down Kyrie Irving and make this Luka Dončić versus the Celtics? Through the first 2 games, Kyrie's 13 for 37 from the field. He's 0 for 8 from 3. He started the game tonight 4 for 5. I think he went 3 for 13 the rest of the game.
Well, yeah, we'll talk more about.
But that goes back to the same thing. The Celtics have relentlessly stuck to their game plan,
Right.
and they know that Luka Dončić by himself can't beat them, and that's why they're in the position they're in.
We'll talk about Kyrie a little later. I want to talk real quick about this play at the final minute. I think there was 50 seconds left, give or take. There was a turnover. I believe Derek Jones did he get a block or a steal?
He blocked. I mean, whatever they called it. Jayson Tatum went to the rim, and Derek Jones blocked
Okay.
and made a great play.
Transition opportunity. It's a 5-point game. I thought the game was over. The Mavericks had a couple of terrible.
Well, the Mavericks.
When Jrue Holiday hit the 3 off
Derek.
of a Luka, no, I'm talking about. Oh yeah,
It was Derek White to put him
hit
up
the
14.
14,
Yeah.
yeah.
14 with what about?
About 3.5 minutes to
Okay.
go.
I mean,
and then
that's-
the Mavericks immediately went on a 9-0 run and got it down to 5.
Well, they had 15 turnovers. Luka had 8. A couple of them just absolutely preposterously awful turnovers. They missed 8 free throws.
I'll say this: Luka Dončić is typically one who allows his opinions on officiating to be felt. he wouldn't complain about the officiating after this game.
No.
He called himself out for 8 turnovers and for missing half of his 8 free throws. Now, I would say on the list of reasons that the Mavericks lost this game, Luka's performance is going to be pretty far down there, but it was a flawed performance. And I'd have to look at the replay. All I saw was an unbelievable defensive play. I didn't know Derek White got credit for the block because Jaylen Brown
right there.
It's sort of appropriate that Jaylen Brown
glass.
doesn't get credit enough for his defense.
Wow.
And Derek White.
Boy, Jaylen Brown, man, there have been multiple defensive plays in this series. Where,
He's
they are
picking up Luka Dončić 80, 85 feet from the basket repeatedly, making him work all the way down the court.
Shut Kyrie down a couple of times tonight. The one time he forced him into a travel along the sideline.
Yes. I mean, he has had defense, whether it's rim protection, whether it's like you said, just smothering Kyrie, whether it's picking Luka half court a couple times in game 1, like the kind of defensive plays that you're sitting there watching the game and you just go, wow.
Listen, he's been saying all year he should be seen as an all defensive team caliber player. He's picked up the primary matchups on a lot of nights. He's obviously done it with Luka Dončić in this series. We talked coming into the series about how unlike the Minnesota Timberwolves, who didn't have multiple guys you could throw at Luka, between Jaylen Brown, who's as strong as an ox, and Jrue Holiday, who might be the strongest guard or perimeter player in the whole league, and Jayson Tatum, who's 6'10 and super long, they got 3 guys you could put on Luka and make life difficult for him. Luka's obviously playing great, but because you have all 3 of those guys, again, to go back to the Celtics' plan, they never have to double. And because they don't ever have to double, these other guys on the Mavs have to get – they're not getting the sundial threes they were getting before.
I tell you
Through
what.
2 games, they're getting some open ones.
They ain't making them, though.
But they're not making them. And those guys are 7. Those guys are 7 for 32. Non-Luka Dončić Mavs, 7 for 32 from 3. And some of that is missed shots, and some of it is they're not creating the same level of double team in space that they always do. And that's because of what Boston can do defensively.
I think some of that has been stage fright as well. I see guys that look like they don't want.
Well, Maxi Kleba,
there's been a lot of
I don't know
giddy up.
The problem with Kleba at this point, and I understand what you guys are saying about how he allows them to stretch the floor. He doesn't want to shoot because his shoulder is messed up. You can see him hitching.
And the Celtics are daring him. I mean, he missed one from that wing over
like
there
Josh
in the
Giddey.
first quarter where, Porzingis
just a little Josh Giddey jab.
Or Ben Simmons or whoever. Name your guy who you're not going to guard.
No, Porzingis was technically assigned to him, but he was on the block, turning around, looking for the rebound before Max let it go.
I also thought it was odd that there were multiple times in the game when they had him and Daniel Gafford out there together.
No, they do that a lot.
No, I know, but I mean against this Boston team, it's giving Porzingis in particular somewhere to hide, and he doesn't have to necessarily run out to the perimeter.
Lively, they need the Lively that we've seen pretty much all season and certainly in the last couple rounds to show up in Dallas because Derek Lively the second, and look, he's the youngest player ever to play in the finals. And
is he? Wow, that's a wild stat.
He's 20 years old, the youngest player ever to play in the finals. I don't know what the difference is in days with Magic, but that's it's not been. This was not a good trip for the rookie.
And by the way, did they get a single lob again today?
They did have one.
They had one?
They had
so
one.
They had 54 in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, so they had one. That's right. They had the one down here.
Kyrie had one to Gafford, too.
Yeah.
Maybe they had 2?
Yeah, but it wasn't like those Luka lobs where he goes down and draws multiple defenders. And
They had 54 in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and they have 2 through 2 games.
I will say this.
2 games, whatever it is.
Luka did force the Mavericks to double team. I'm sorry. Take
the
that
Celtics.
back. The Celtics to double team. They double-teamed him 13 times in this game, which is more than they double-teamed almost anybody because he was so awesome in the first half.
Yeah.
The Mavericks couldn't take advantage of it. They were 3 of 10 off
part of the reason I think that Boston did do that, I think it was almost less because of what Luka was doing and more because, to your point, they stopped worrying about these guys making shots because they can just leave them alone and it doesn't matter.
I agree. All right, so we mentioned Kyrie a little bit in the opening. You had his stats. What is he shooting again? Give it to me again.
He's 7 for 18 in game 2. He's 13 for 37 across the first 2 games. He's 0 for 8 from 3, which, by the way, means Kyrie Irving, one of the best interior finishers among guards in the league, he's only 13 for 29 on 2s, which is obviously not what he normally does either.
He's not getting any space whatsoever. Holiday and Derek White and Jaylen Brown, who's ever on him, he can, when he's going to the paint, he's got no windows. They're all over him. His dribble game is not creating space. When he gets in his left-handed shots and all his others, he's not getting space. There's guys up on top of him. He has been obviously missing some good outside looks, but he can't get his space when he gets his 2 feet in the paint. And not only that, after praising him for months appropriately about his defense, guys, he's getting cooked. He so far in this series, 11 of 16. Actually, was that just tonight? Was that stat? Was 11 of 16 tonight?
I did not see that
All right,
stat.
11 of 16 for 20. I think it's for the series. When he's the primary defender, the Celtics have made 11 of 16 shots for 27 points. He is not getting it done anywhere. And I actually think, again, for months, and appropriately so, we have praised him for his mental approach. I think, is that tonight or that wasn't just tonight? That was for the series? 11 of 16? All right. Anyway.
I'm scrolling.
We've praised him for his mental approach. I think he's let the fans get into him a little bit. First off, for no good reason, he says after game 1 that the fans weren't that loud.
Celtics threw that up on the Jumbotron a bunch of times today.
Yes, and they were very loud in booing him as a result for me when he walked out on the court.
And they were pretty loud in game 1.
Yes, certainly the crowd was very into it. Secondly, a couple of times early in the game, especially when he made a couple of shots, because he did make 4 of his first 5.
Went 4 for 5.
He was being demonstrative back at the fans.
Yeah.
And look, it's fine. You can take it back if that fires you up, but this is not what Kyrie is doing. Remember, now 0-12, 12 straight losses.
Yep. Since he
stepped on Lucky back there.
Yeah, and that eye's still swollen shut.
Well, and listen, we talked about it after the conference
By the way,
finals.
he did. That was a funny line that his eye is still swollen shut. He did. I looked at the replay today. He did actually stomp on his closed eye, on his winking eye.
Well, listen, I talked about it at the end of the conference finals. I went and read through the transcript from Kyrie's answers that day. I was not convinced he was going to walk in here and be all locked in the way he has been in this series. And look, again, this goes back to the way the Celtics play at both ends of the court. They put relentless pressure on you. Put relentless pressure on defense because they can guard you in ways no other team can. I know Minnesota had the best defensive rating in the league. The Celtics are the best defensive team in the league because they can do everything at both ends. On the defensive end of the court, they can guard any way. They can switch. They've got bigs that they can drop in. They can play multiple bigs together. They can do whatever they want. And on the other end of the court, on offense, you can't hide somebody for 2 minutes. You can't hide Luka Dončić somewhere. You can't hide Kyrie Irving somewhere. They have to guard somebody.
But the point is that you don't need to hide Kyrie anymore. That's how the Mavericks got here.
Well, Kyrie had been phenomenal defensively through the first 3 rounds of this, and there were times where he was setting the tone, picking up 94 feet, all those kind of things. But yes, the stat is he's given up 27 points on 11 to 16 shooting as the primary defender. Again, Luka allowed 13 blow-bys today. It's the most by any player in any game this season. And look, they want to chase the Celtics off the three-point line, but boy, not like that. And the Celtics still got up 39 threes.
Speaking of getting into it with fans, Wick Griesbach, who's the Celtics governor, his seats are right here, just to my right in between the Celtics bench and the scorer's table. Wick, and this is quite a move and sort of, I think, underscores the confidence the Celtics must feel.
Yeah.
Starts talking trash at Luka.
Well, Luka had a bad turnover right in front of him.
Well, there was about 6 of those.
Whined about not getting the foul, and Wick was giving him the T signal, and then Luka hit a shot and let him know about it.
Now, Luka did not know. He said, I don't know who the Celtics owner is. Somebody asked him about it. But Luka doesn't care.
He was also getting into it with fans across the way.
Yeah, there was a green hoodie guy. When Luka was lighting the world on fire in the first half, there was a green hoodie guy who was feeling his wrath.
Right about the same place where I believe Tyrese Halliburton was going at somebody in games 1 and 2 of the conference finals.
I tell you what, though, man, I think Luka, I think the gas tank was running pretty low late in this game.
He's 2 of 10 in the fourth quarter in the first 2 games.
Yeah, 23 of his 32 in the first half. He did get going, as a facilitator in the second half. But, man, Second half, 5 turnovers. They were all live ball turnovers. Led directly to 9 points. All in transition.
Name your bad quarterback, your interception-prone quarterback of the last 20 years. He threw a couple of passes that were equivalent of like rolling right and throwing left across the field.
Yeah.
It's some Josh
And
Allen plays.
he also, there was a couple of times there in the second half where they got Peyton Pritchard switched on to Luka. That is, Luka has he eats steaks that are bigger than Peyton Pritchard. You give me a break, that is food for him. And he missed what I thought were very easy little turnarounds over him. And I'm wondering, does he have his legs under him? And he had this. I learned a new word today, thoracic. Apparently, it means his chest was bruised. Doesn't know when it happens. Thinks it was when he took a charge. Didn't feel it till the next day.
They ran a clip on the broadcast in Game 1 where he sort of went flat on his back on a. I don't know if he got the charge, but there was.
Yeah. So he
was been rubbing his chest. He rubs. I asked you about this and you didn't remember it. Maybe my memory is going by the day, but he was rubbing his chest in the Oklahoma City series.
Yeah. Now him being questionable in a game time decision, they knew he was playing.
He was always playing.
I will say this: the Mavericks did try a little bit of manipulation with the whole Jayson kid saying Jaylen Brown's the best player, and then. Yesterday at practice, he's rubbing his chest in front of the media.
Let's be honest. There were a lot of moves over the last 24 to 36 hours that were signs of, frankly, a pretty desperate team, in my opinion. They look like a team that felt like if they didn't win this game, series is over.
Well, the Mavericks don't believe they're the best team in this series.
And they're not the best team in the series.
P.J. Washington said that's what he said, right?
Right. Luka said at the end of the last series when they clinched the West, they said, hey, Boston's the best team in the NBA.
Look,
let's just say the Mavericks. Now, I'm not going to say they don't think they can pull off an upset, but they've fully acknowledged that it would be a significant upset.
Listen, let's just say it like it is. You got Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving. How many Celtics are you picking before you're picking a Mav? I think you're picking 6.
Well, and Lively would be the third Maverick, and he's not. He has not played at that level.
Him.
I agree. You're right.
6 of the 8 best players in the series are on the Celtics. To me, it was absolutely insane how people were talking about this series.
Well, and Jrue Holiday is outplaying Kyrie Irving.
But I'm saying, the Celtics were a team that won 64 games. They had a net rating of 11-7. Yes, they went through the Eastern Conference and beat a bunch of teams that were injured, but people have been projecting onto them for this entire season the stuff that they did in prior years.
Well, and that's why for the Mavericks to have a chance to win this series, they needed to have the 2 best players in the series.
That's right.
They needed Luka and Kyrie to be, in whatever order. Obviously, you assume it's going to be Luka 1, Kyrie 2. You can argue. I didn't think Luka was great in Game 1, but he had 30 and 10 still. But tonight, 32-point triple. A flawed 32-point triple-double.
He had
but
some turnovers, but he was still really good in this game.
You can argue. You can make the argument Luka has been the best player in the series. We can have a debate about that, whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
For the sake of argument, let's say that he has. Kyrie's not been second, third, maybe even fourth, fifth.
He hasn't been better than any of the top 6 Celtics.
The debate, I don't know, rank the Celtics. Right now it might be Jrue Holiday,
Porzingis,
Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White,
been great.
Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard. Wait, are we going to get to Tatum at any point?
Listen.
I'm exaggerating.
Listen, at the end of the day, yes, the Celtics come into the series. I kept going back to that Oklahoma City series where, again, to go back to the Joe Mazzulla process thing, right? The Thunder had good process in that series. Now, process doesn't necessarily get you wins, but the Thunder took Kyrie Irving out of that series, put Jalen Williams on him, and they basically said, Luka we're going to dare him to beat us, and we're going to dare these others to beat us, right? And P.J. Washington hit a ton of shots. Derek Jones Jr. hit a ton of shots, and they won that series.
Yeah, they're probably a little bit annoyed watching this series.
Well, and look, the Celtics, they're just a relentless team. And, look, they went from having Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and Marcus Smart to Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. Those 3 guys are good players. Those 2 guys are all-stars.
But even with all of that true, and you know how I've felt about the Celtics, I've continued to defend them on various ESPN shows for weeks now.
Various shows.
Various.
The two stars from the Mavericks have just got to play better. Like, I understand it's hard.
MacMahon said it. That's that's their chance in the series. Kyrie has to be way better. Luka can't have 8 turnovers. He can't get tired.
Derek Lively can't be a non-factor too.
PJ's got to hit shots.
They've got one more chance. They've got one more chance. One thing that is interesting going into Wednesday's Game 3, Kristaps Porzingis had to be pulled out of this game late in the fourth quarter because he tweaked that right calf. Now, first off, Porzingis, Jrue Holiday is plus 26 in the series. That's best on the Celtics. Porzingis is second, plus 25. When he has come into the game in the midway point of the first quarter and the midway point of the third quarter, it's made a difference.
Matched him up with Derek Lively, by the way, and it's been very effective.
Yes. So this is significant. Also, Porzingis is playing very good defense. It looked to me like he sort of stretched that calf when he was sort of he was sort of chasing a ball, and he kind of stretched it out, and he fell, and then after that, he was favoring it.
It was a little unclear if it was because he looked like he had a wrap on his ankle too, so it was a little unclear if he maybe did something to his ankle or it was his calf. Either way, whatever it was, he was definitely labored a little bit after he stepped.
They sent Al Horford to the table, and they couldn't get a stoppage in play, and Mazzulla eventually just called timeout to get Porzingis out of the game. He didn't come back for the last 3.5 minutes. What did he say after the game?
Well, and he did, to be clear, he did sit on the bench. He wasn't really getting work done.
Right.
Like he had a band and he was stretching his leg a little bit. But he eventually put it around his neck and stood there and watched. Like seemingly not in a ton of discomfort. Right. And after the game, he joked it'll die out on the court when asked if he'd be ready to go in Game 3. And it seemed like he was going to be out there.
Yeah,
and
I'm not expecting him to miss games.
Well, no, look.
But I'm more interested in whether it'll affect him.
Well, yeah, I asked him if he's going to get imaging done. He said, I believe the plan is to get some imaging done, so we'll see. But he was walking around. He wasn't really limping. I talked to a bunch of people around the team, and there wasn't a ton of fear about him being compromised.
Yeah.
Joe Mazzulla said he had zero concern. Now, Joe tends to also pretend that there are no injuries all the time, so that's why I made sure to be in there and to talk to Kristaps and to see him after the game. But, look, obviously, if he isn't exactly at 100%, given how important he has been, and they're going on the road to Dallas, where in theory Dallas will hit more shots and play better, certainly they will want to have him out there to 100%. And also, ironically, because it's in the NBA Finals, this will potentially be the first time Kristaps Porzingis has played in Dallas at all.
I was going to say.
The Dallas fans can't bother themselves with worrying about Porzingis.
Well, no, but it is just funny. It's just funny that
he doesn't play in Dallas.
Yeah, he hasn't so far. So, we'll see what happens this week. It's certainly going to be an interesting storyline, but he's been great through the first 2 games for the Celtics.
And look, he might get booed, but I don't believe there's any great animosity towards Kristaps Porzingis.
He certainly seems to have none towards them. All he can say is he enjoyed his time there. He loves the fans.
He's still getting paid, by the way, on that contract. These are the dying days of the Mavericks contract they signed him to.
Yeah, sure. The fully guaranteed 5-year max with player options,
which he opted into to make this trade happen
before
last
he played
June.
a second for the Mavericks.
The fun max.
It's pretty fun for the Celtics.
This year's been pretty fun. Yeah, this year's been pretty fun for him. And look, man, Porzingis. Game 1, Porzingis. The first quarter, I think, is the best quarter he's ever played.
Unquestionably.
In his career. Just absolutely dominating on both ends. Tonight, he was all right. He wasn't anywhere near as big of a factor.
Well, you know what he was? They kept getting him the ball right over here at the elbow against somebody smaller than him, and he just kept turning and making it. And that's the thing that they've done with him all year. It's why the post numbers have been good. It's not throw it to him on the block and have him make moves. It's have him get it at the elbow against a smaller guy and just raise up and shoot a jumper. And that was a really solid dose of offense for Boston early in the game when Dallas got out to a lead and looked like they might be able to
He's
get some
a much
separation.
more confident offensive player than he was in Dallas.
Yeah, and
he's more involved.
We can talk about chicken or egg stuff there. I think if we had Porzingis here and he was being honest, and he talked to me about this back when he was in Dallas, he felt like part of the reason that his post-up numbers were so bad in Dallas is because he knew, hey, they don't want me in here, they don't believe in me in here, Now, I also think he's worked on his game. He has improved. It's like in Dallas, he gets pushed way off his spot on a regular basis and take crap turnaround 16-footers. But all that stuff you're talking about, they did not want him doing that in Dallas because they wanted the ball in Luka's hands. They wanted to run pick and roll. But again, that stuff is ancient history, and he left Dallas, and he was disappointed to kind of get dumped. The Mavs were disappointed that they didn't feel like it was going to be a long-term fit with him and Luka, give him the price that they paid. KP, after a pause in Siberia, he certainly found a spot where he fits perfectly, and obviously he could not ask for a better situation.
When you look at the value of these super tall, floor-stretching bigs,
yeah.
So you're talking about Wembanyama. Wembanyama's got a lot going for him, but that's
right.
One
Chet
of the things
Holmgren is this
Chet
type.
Holmgren.
Brooke Lopez was kind of the pioneer of that.
Absolutely.
Well, and look at Brooke Lopez and Kristaps Porzingis too, right? They're two fairly similar situations. Brooke Lopez is in LA, has a disastrous season with the Lakers, signs with the Milwaukee Bucks on a biannual exception for a couple $1 million a year, and Mike Budenholzer gets him in a perfect defensive system, turns him into a defensive anchor for them, and he's bombing away from 30 feet away from three, right? You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis being in Siberia. He's in Washington for a year and a half. This is a guy who's playing in Dallas with Luka Dončić, gets drafted, wanted to be on the New York Knicks, wanted to play at Madison Square Garden. From the moment he got here last summer, there were a lot of people in the league who called me after the Celtics traded for him and said, how is this guy going to fit with them?
Yeah.
Is he going to be cool being the fifth guy? Is he going to be cool being the sixth guy? Is he going to be cool not having the ball all the time? From the second this guy got here, all he has done is say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I'll take 2 shots, take 10 shots, take 30 shots, put me where you want on the court. This week, obviously, he started every game this season. He's come off the bench the first 2 games. All he said about that is, I don't care. I just want to win. He has been walking around with a smile on his face from the second he got here. And to your point about where he was in Dallas and where he was mentally,
Yeah.
a lot of times in the NBA, it's right place, right time. When you look at this Celtics team, and whether it's him or Jrue Holiday coming over here from Milwaukee with certainly some extra motivation after the way that all went. You look at the Celtics guys, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, who've been knocking on the door over and over again. These guys have all seen their numbers dip this year. They've all taken less shots. They've all done a little bit less. And the group of them together.
Jrue Holiday's season high was 22 points. He averaged 6 or 7 fewer points in the regular season than he did last year when he was an All-Star.
Yep.
Game 1 of the conference finals, 28. Game 2, NBA Finals, 26.
And by the way, he's shown up in the playoffs. There were times of the year where I was wondering, like, is he really able to turn it up? Is he just sort of settling in and doing a role here? And you've seen in the playoffs, the Jrue Holiday the Celtics traded for, he has shown up at every point they've needed big plays in the playoffs.
By the way, how's that Porzingis 2-year, $60 million contract
that looks
extension?
Great. It looks as good as his deal with the Mavericks when he was in Dallas looked bad. And I do truly believe, and I have not talked to KP about this, but I truly believe the disappointment and the struggles that he went through in Dallas prepared him to succeed here with the Celtics. I don't think this is going nearly as smoothly if this is KP coming straight from the Knicks to Boston. The KP who was used to being treated like a face of the franchise.
No
the
question.
KP who, considered himself to be a superstar at that time. And a lot of and early on when there was the headbutting with Luka, is more passive aggressive like we've talked about, but it was about, KP thought it was a 1A 1B situation, not a hey, he's the man and I'm kind of part of the supporting cast, whereas here not that there's one face of the franchise. J-Kid tried to make it, is it Tatum, is it Brown? But, but KP understands how he can fit in, and he understands, like, the most valuable thing you can do defensively is shut the paint down. One of the most valuable things you can do offensively is open the floor up. He does both those things. These rim-protecting, floor-spacing bigs.
Which is what Holmgren does, which is what Wembanyama does, which is what Like we talked a lot this year about Evan Mobley. That would be like the Cavs.
Well, listen, in the top 8 guys on the Celtics, they all shoot threes. And when they're all out here behind the three-point line, Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser too when they're out there. And so whenever you've got guys out there, it's 5 guys out on the perimeter, creates a lot of lanes to attack the paint. And like we talked about earlier, then it just becomes this churn all game of get to the rim, either get a layup, kick it out. That's the whole base of what everything that Boston does.
All right, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Jayson Tatum because he is playing an interesting finals, and I sure hope when I wake up tomorrow that I'm not hearing criticism, but I'm afraid that might happen. Jayson Tatum has shot the ball quite poorly these first 2 games. Just 6 of 22. Was that what he was in game 2? He was.
You're asking me to know facts.
Yeah, I should know. It was hours ago now, though, at this point. He's being very heavily double-teamed, which you mentioned earlier, MacMahon, that we say actions over words on the Hoop Collective.
Right.
Jason Kidd can say that the best player is Jaylen Brown. His actions indicate, at least offensively, he's worried about Jayson Tatum.
The game plan starts with trying to get the ball out of Tatum's hands. And if you're – I don't think Jason Kidd accidentally said Jaylen Brown's their best player and then repeated it. And if you're wondering what's the motivation, aside from throwing a stink bomb in the Celtics locker room and seeing how they handle it, then it's, hey, we're going to be throwing doubles at Tatum, so who do you want to try to do too much? The guy who's getting double-teamed. And Tatum got up 22 shots. I thought some of them were not great
poor.
looks.
Yeah, for sure.
1 of 7 from three-point range. But, dude, 12 assists. He only committed 3 turnovers. Like, he hadn't shot the ball well, but he's impacted games.
Yeah, he's distributed very well. Like, they're basically saying, we want you to pass, and he's passing, and it's making a big – in this particular game, a lot of these Jrue Holiday plays, you talked about it, Bontemps, where he was cutting off the ball. I think he was 6 of 7 off Tatum passes, and they were like, okay, Drew's like, if you're going to double off me and ignore me, I'm going to go to the basket. And Tatum hit him, and he is not playing well, but he's playing very effective. He is, once again, their leading rebounder. I wrote a story about the Celtics rebounds. He has averaged at least 10 rebounds in 6 consecutive playoff series. Guess what he's averaging through 2 games? 10 rebounds. He's rebounding. He's assisting. He's playing defense. I agree. You would prefer a guy you're about to give $300 million to would be a dominant offensive player as a shooter. I think he's playing an effective series. I know it's not great, but I don't think he deserves much criticism other than he's missing some bad shots.
I would say he's been fine.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Celtics is, and sort of the thing that people have not really understood, is all the things the Celtics have done have been geared toward ensuring that games like this don't matter. Like, Jayson Tatum is not...
Tatum performances like
that's
this.
That's what I'm saying.
He's saying
Jayson
they
Tatum,
can overcome a Tatum offensive dud.
Jayson Tatum is not Luka Dončić.
Yes.
And that's okay. Like, he's not as good as Luka Dončić. That's okay. The reason the Celtics have 6 awesome players on their team is so that if 1 guy or 2 guys don't play well, they have 4 or 5 other guys who are really good to step up and play great. And Jayson Tatum has been fine. He is moving the ball. The rebounding has been a huge deal, especially because they have him guarding the bigs a lot of the time because they have Porzingis or Al Horford out on one of these other guys to keep them out of the pick and rolls with Luka so they can switch them. And, like, that is certainly helpful. He has been attacking the rim and getting the kickouts for threes, which has helped. But, again, it goes back to this is all about what the plan for the Celtics is. They don't have to have Jayson Tatum
because they got Porzingis and Holiday last offseason.
That's right.
Who've
and they
been
have
great.
Derek White and they have Jaylen
because
Brown.
they've had Jaylen Brown since before Tatum got here, and Jaylen Brown has developed into a supermax player himself.
By the way, Jaylen Brown's been very efficient. As inefficient as Tatum has been, Jaylen Brown has been extremely efficient.
And Jaylen Brown has put together a highlight reel in terms of his finishes and some of the blocks that he's had. Oh my! I mean, the guy jumps like he's on a trampoline.
Well, and he's throwing out some massive dunks too. I mean, look,
yes.
And that's the thing, though. The Celtics. This is who the Celtics are. They have a orchestra of guys that any one of them could step up on a given night and play great. They don't. It's not just Luka has to win the game all the time like that, and that's not a criticism of Tatum. It's like literally what the build of the team is, and so he can do these other things in his eye to be successful.
Jaylen Brown was wearing a mic tonight, and I have no idea if this is a typical Jaylen Brown talking game. We don't get to hear of Mike every game. He was really showing a lot of leadership in the huddles, on the court. You know, he was very much talking like the vocal leader of the team. I mean, we know that's not something that Tatum, you know, he's not as vocal.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely you could tell in tonight's game how important his voice is. They kept playing more and more and more sound from Jaylen Brown because there was so much good stuff.
Well, and look, part of the thinking behind the Kristaps Porzingis trade, it wasn't just to get Kristaps Porzingis to have him be the switch weapon that they needed in the playoffs because Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown had struggled in isolation in the past. It's also because Marcus Smart was the emotional leader of the Celtics and always had the largest voice in the room. By taking Marcus Smart out of the room, it creates a vacuum for Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to step into and fill. And if you go back to October in training camp, they trade for Jrue Holiday the day before the season starts. And I wrote a story about this back in the fall. Jayson Tatum goes to Joe Mazzulla and says, hey, the six of us are going to get in a room, and we're going to sort out who's going to start.
That's exactly right.
And the six of them got in a room and said, hey, Al, we're going to have you come off the bench. You'll start whenever Porzingis doesn't play, and we're going to roll forward with this. And everybody was on board with it. And that's not something that would have happened if Marcus Smart was there. It would have been Marcus Smart doing all that stuff. And I think, as you've seen as this year has gone on, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown have stepped into that role. And we talked about it going into this game with the way they handled the stuff with Jason Kidd in yesterday's media day. These guys are in the best mental place that I've seen them in the 6 years I've been at ESPN around this team. And it's a big part of why they're up 2-0 in the series.
Well, they have been building towards this moment since the day that they had decided to make the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade.
Yeah.
They have been working on getting here. They wish they would have got here faster.
11 years ago this month.
Right. It was been 11 years. They've been working to get here. They wish they had gotten here faster, but if you look at this team, you can see the step-by-step, the way they got here. And now they have gotten to a spot where they are 2 wins away from doing it. They were 2 wins away from doing it 2 years ago, but nowhere near the dynamic and both mental and out on the court that they are now. And we're going to see in this next week whether they can get those 2 more wins. This was a very special night in Boston from a media standpoint because every year when they make the finals, they have lobster for the media. And I don't just
Surf
mean
and turf, steak and lobsters.
Steak and lobster, but the lobster is, is the real. You get a full lobster, and our guy MacMahon. Actually, you did too. I skipped the lobster.
I got a lobster.
But
I had a little less trouble than MacMahon with the lobster.
We could have sold, Twitch passes.
Twitch.
Whatever. Streaming passes to watch MacMahon eat the lobster tonight.
Well, I saw that, and I first thought that crossed my mind was that's the biggest dang old crawfish I've ever seen in my life.
We had to get super producer Melinda Adams over there to help him.
Now listen,
actually
first
take
of all,
apart the lobster.
no, in my defense, number one, I'm just kidding. I've seen lobster before plenty of times.
Yeah, up in
Now,
Maine in the
I
reform
I
school.
boycotted lobster when I got shipped off to that boarding school in Maine because I didn't want to be in Maine.
I still can't believe you got lobster at the reform school.
No, we didn't
Offered
get it at the reform school. Like, my dad would come up every once in a while and we'd go out to dinner, but I would refuse to eat lobster because it would be like accepting being in Maine. So, no disrespect to Maine,
No,
but
none
it
at all.
sucked in the winter. So I was boycotting the lobster for a while. Also, like, the little cracker things were, they were tiny.
I had no
They were like a
trouble.
little
The
safety
cracker,
pin
you're
type of
talking
things.
about the shell breaking device.
I had no
I
trouble
will
with
say
it.
this. Thank goodness I had the bib on because there was definitely some squirtage that occurred.
There was a lot of spray. There was a lot of spray.
Bontemps was like sitting over there with like perfect posture with like his elbows out, doing it like, prim and proper, and MacMahon's over there ripping.
He was mostly just staring at it going, what do I do with this thing?
Well, we're headed to Texas now, and don't have to worry about lobster down there. Back to barbecue and MacMahon's favorite, salmon. Everything shifts to Texas, including the Mavericks' last hope. They got to win in Game 3 on Wednesday night, and we'll be back on the pod on Wednesday to talk about it. Thank you for watching the Hoop Collective, presented by Coinbase. We'll talk to you soon.